Report 1.5 can be used to list out the most promoted suppliers of a certain category. You can use this report to observe the share of promotions of multiple key suppliers across a selected period and how the promotions have trended or have changed across different time periods. From this information, you can then review the allocations of the promotions across different channels. We'll now move into making the selections on how we can observe which key suppliers had the most promotions during this period. So the first thing that we can look into is the market. So if you click on the market selection box, you'll see West Malaysia, Sabah and Sarawak listed. Now each of this region or market refers to where the promotions were spotted. So West Malaysia refers to all the promotions spotted in Peninsular Malaysia, Sabah refers to the promotions spotted in Kota Kinabalu, and Sarawak refers to the promotions spotted in Kuching. Now if you're not currently subscribed to East Malaysia data, Sabah and Sarawak will not be part of your selection and you'll only be able to see West Malaysia data. If you are subscribed to it, then you can go ahead and click Sabah and Sarawak as part of your selection as well. But for this example, we'll just look into West Malaysia data first. Next is the date range. For date range, there is a limit to the selection. You can only choose up to 2 years of data or 24 months of data. If you were to select more than 24 months, you will get this error message, which means you'll have to redo your selection. For now, we'll just be looking into the data for the first quarter of the year. The following selection is for sources. So under sources, you'll have all sources and all regional data. So all sources refers to the promotions that is applicable to every store of the selected retailer. All regional data refers to promotions that are limited to certain stores only. So this is applicable to promotions for retailers like Billion. Otherwise, it's also applicable to promotions for the opening of new stores, for example, where the promotions are only valid to that store alone instead of all stores for that retailer. So for now, we'll be selecting mailer and newspaper promotions only. And I'll explain more on why we're not selecting in-store later on. The next selection we can make is for promotion type. So in MailerTrack, the promotions are separated into 3. The normal promotion, which means any promotion with a description and a price point. Range promotion, which means no specific price point is given, but for a range of items, a percentage discount or a price range is given instead. And lastly is Buy X Free Y. Buy X Free Y is something that is only spotted in in-store promotions. It is when no price is provided, but it is stated that with the purchase of item X, you will get item Y as a free gift. So for this one, since in our sources selection we've only selected mailer and newspaper, we'll exclude Buy X Free Y promotions for now. The next selection you can make is for the rank. So for rank, you have the option to select top 5, top 10, top 25 or all. The ranking here decides how many of the key suppliers you'll be able to see in the generated chart. So to keep things simple, we'll put top 5 first. However, if you'd like to see more suppliers, you can also choose top 10, 25 or all. Under channel, it's separated into convenience stores and petromarts under CVS, hypermarkets, pharmacies, and supermarkets. So for this report that we're going to generate, we'll be looking into hypermarkets and supermarkets promotions only. And lastly, for the categories. Under the categories, the first thing you'll see is the department you're subscribed to. And if you click on the drop-down, it will list out all the categories you're subscribed to within that department, as seen here. So you can choose to scroll down over all these selections to look for the category you'd like to generate. Or if you already know what you would like to see, you can also type in the category here and select from there. The save function here allows you to save the selection you've made so far, which means the next time you come into this report, you don't have to redo this entire selection. You can just click on update straight away. And if you'd like to reselect everything, you can press reset. And it will clear off the selection to return to the default selections that you saw earlier. So now, since we're happy with our selections, we can click on update. And since we don't need this selection for now, you can minimize it. so you'll only be able to see the charts. Now, as I mentioned earlier, one of the functions of this report is for you to see the percentage share of the promotions of the key suppliers and how they've changed over a period of time. So the first chart that you see here, you can choose to maximize it. The data seen here shows the latest 6 months of promotions for the selected category in the channel that you selected. So in this case, for chocolate promotions in hypermarket and supermarket for the last 6 months since March 2020, these are the most promoted supplier. So if you're not sure what the colors are referring to, you can hover your cursor over the chart and it will list it up for you. So the blue one is Mondelez. The reason it has a bar chart as opposed to the line chart that everyone else has is because for the period of 6 months, Mondelez was the most promoted supplier in Hyper and Super. So from here you can see how the promotions have trended. For most key suppliers, during the last quarter of 2019, the promotions were slowly increasing and most have peaked here in January 2020 and started declining again in the first quarter of 2020. If you go down here, you'll see the legend for the suppliers. So from here, you also have the option of comparing two different suppliers itself. So for example, if you're only interested in looking at Mondelez and Nestle data, you do not want to see the other suppliers, you can actually just click on each of the colors and it will actually eliminate them from the chart itself. So you'll be able to compare Mondelez and Nestle promotions more clearly. And if you want to include them again, all you need to do is click on it and you'll see how the promotions have changed. So from here, you can see how the trend of one supplier is compared to another. So for example, Mondelez and Nestle has had basically a similar trend throughout October 2019 till March 2020. But you can see that Mars Food is actually following a different trend. And instead of peaking in promotions in Jan 2020, it actually had the most promotions in December 2019 instead. And instead of declining throughout the first quarter of 2020, Mars Food was started declining in December 2019 and actually increased in promotions in March 2020. Now keep in mind that this chart shows the latest 6 months, which puts Mondelez as the most promoted supplier. However, in this chart, it's only showing the latest 3 months of data. So it's comparing the first quarter of 2020 versus the first quarter of 2019. And from that, instead of Mondelez, Nestle was the most promoted supplier. You can see from here why the period of your selection is so important because it changes the data. So from here you can see that while Nestle is still the most promoted supplier in hyper and supermarket, mailer and newspaper promotions, there's actually been a huge decline in promotions. In the first quarter of 2019, among the key suppliers, Nestle had 30% of the promotions. But in 2020, Nestle promotions only made up 20% of the entire chocolate promotions. You can see that Mondelez, Ferrero, and Network Foods are actually catching up to us in terms of the number of promotions, especially Mondelez. Now, if you scroll down further, at the bottom here, you'll see the chart. So what this chart is, it reflects the numbers that is seen on the chart on top. So from this one, you can see that from October 2019 all the way till March 2020, the numbers here is split based on the supplier. And if you hover over the blue numbers, you'll see that your cursor changes into a hand cursor, which means that you can actually click on the numbers and it will list out the promotions there for you. So you can use this to see what the promotions are. For example, here we've clicked on the promotions for Nestle in November 2019. So perhaps you want to look into for the entire Nestle promotions in 2019, how much of it belonged to Nestle Crunch. So what you can do is you can click on the search bar here and just type Crunch. And it will list out all the Nestle Crunch promotions that was found in November 2019 in Hyper and Super. At the top here is a selection for the type of promotions. So you see normal, range, and buy X3Y. So keep in mind that we did not select buy X3Y in our selection. If you select buy X3Y, nothing will come out here. However, if you select range discount, the reason nothing comes out here as well is because for November 2019, there were no range discount for Nestle promotions. So which means all the data found here is only normal promotions, which means one description and one price point. If you go down here, you'll see a selection of records. So we know that there's a total of 38 features spotted in November, but only 10 is listed here. So we have the option of going to the next page to look at the rest of the promotions, or you can click on this and change the number of records shown. So from here, all 38 promotions are listed. And if you would like to learn more on each of these promotions, all you need to do is click on it, and it will actually bring you to the page where the promotion was spotted. So from here, you can see that it was for the Nestle Crunch Wafer Nuts. That was the new product at the time. This chart can also be exported to Excel if you wish to do further analysis on the data. All you need to do is click on Export to Excel, and it will come up in a table format for you here. The only difference between this chart and the one that you see in the website, that this one does not have the link to page function, so you will not be able to refer to the images from this data set. So as I mentioned, the table here refers to the chart shown above. So from here you can see that Nestle promotions have declined by 20%, and so has Mars Food. But others like Mondelez, Ferrero Asia, and Network Foods, they've actually grown during the first quarter of 2020 when compared to the first quarter of 2019. So keep in mind that this is only for hyper and supermarket. And for categories like chocolate, it's also heavily promoted in stores. So for now, we'll take a look into that as well. So how we do that is just by redoing this selection here. So for the sources, instead of mailer and newspaper, we can look into in-store. And for the promotion type, for now, we'll include buy X3Y as well. And under channels, instead of hyper and super, we'll be choosing convenience stores. And click on update. So from here, you can already see a slight change in the data. Earlier, remember that for the last 6 months of data, October 2019 till March 2020, the most promoted supplier was Mondelez. But if we only look into in-store data in convenience stores and petromats, the most promoted supplier was actually Nestle. However, similar to how it was in hyper and supermarket, Nestle promotions were still declining even in in-store for the first quarter of 2020 versus the first quarter of 2019. If you go down further, you can see this growth displayed more clearly. So from the hyper and supermarket, Nestle promotions had declined by 20%. In-store, meanwhile, it's declined even more than that. It's declined by 50%. However, we remember that in hypermarket and supermarket, Mars Food was also declining, although at a different rate to Nestle. However, in in-store promotions, you can see that it was only Nestle that's declining. All other key suppliers, Mars, Mondelez, Ferrero, and Network, they're actually increasing in promotions there. So from here, you can see how each supplier's promotions are trending in different channels. And now that we have this data on hand, we can use it to review how we choose to allocate our promotions in the future. Whether we want to continue reducing our promotions in all these different channels, in all these different sources, or perhaps we'd like to change our strategies. As in, our competitors are mainly increasing in promotions in all these different channels and all these different sources. So are we going the right direction by actually decreasing ours? And if their promotions are being featured more than us, will that have any effect on our share of the sales contribution for this category?